was approached by a lady called Margaret Schuler. She worked in Washington at the time. And she had been working in Latin America, setting up networks to help women. And I don't know how she heard of me, but she sent me an email. Was it email? I don't even remember how, but she got in touch with me and said, look, we've been doing this in Latin America. We set up networks which are helping women in the Latin American area. And I think it would be a good idea if we explore the possibility of doing the same for Africa. In other words, setting up a network in which all the African countries will participate so that we would extend some help to women. So she invited me to a meeting in Harare, which I attended. The meeting was attended by Nigeria, somebody from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya. Anyway, a number of African countries. And we explored, and I thought it was a very good idea because then you're helping more people than just having. So that ended up in the establishment of Women in Law and Development in Africa. Women in Law and Development because we didn't want it to be a totally legal. We wanted it to be a multidisciplinary network where we utilize the skills of everybody, not just lawyers, other professionals. So we inaugurated this Women in Law and Development in Africa. I don't know, in 1990 something, in Harare, with the then First Lady who was a Ghanaian, Mrs. Saleh Mugabe. She inaugurated it, and she was so proud that Ghana was part of it, and what Ghana had played such a prominent part of it. So we had the International Federation of Women Lawyers, which is just lawyers, and then we had the Women in Law and Development in Africa. And one of the first projects we decided to do was what we call legal literacy. Legal literacy because a lot of women didn't think law was part of their daily lives. One of the first things we did in Ghana was to do a needs assessment. Just sitting with FIDA, just sitting in Makola and talking to the women. How do you think law plays a part in your life? Law? No. Law has nothing to do with me. I come to the market to sell my things. I said, when you come to the market, don't you pay? I said, yeah, the AMA, they come to collect monies. And I said, what do they do for you? Nothing. We don't even have places of convenience. The children are all around them. There's no creche. I said, do you realize that you can ask them to provide a creche so that your children will go to school, will be in the creche while you are selling and so. Anyway, it was a very humbling experience. We realized that we needed to help women understand a little more the environment in which they work so that they could use, how should I say it, so that they could be able to identify their problems and look for help. So we decided that legal literacy, we had to train ourselves to be able to do it. The Latin Americans had done it. So we had a workshop, I don't even know, somewhere in Africa, I forget some of these things, where we got trained. And that is, at the time, FIDA had developed these little booklets on inheritance, on family maintenance of children and so on. And we used these little booklets to train women's groups, like the Makola Women's Association. We go into the villages, and we bring them together for 1 week. If you have a husband, you have a responsibility towards your children, but your husband also has a responsibility. it's not just the man's responsibility to look after their children. It is also yours. So it's a joint responsibility. And if he refuses to play his part, what do you do? So these are some of the training that we gave them. We went around almost the southern, I'm not saying southern Ghana, we didn't go to the north because funding was a challenge. But we did what we could. So WILDAF came together with FIDA, and together we did this legal literacy thing. And I realized that it yielded a lot of results because a lot of the women we trained became very self-assertive. But one thing we noticed, when you go into a town and you want to work with the women, go to the chief first. Convince the chief of what you are trying to do. And then when the gong gong is beaten, the men will push their wives. Otherwise, the women won't come. This is how my international work, because doing the WILDAF work put me into Africa. We went to train people in Kenya, in Zambia, Tanzania, to do this legal literacy work. And you know how it is in the international. Tomorrow you have a call. We know you've been doing this. We are doing this. Can you come and help and so on? So every year we got funding and went to the Commission on Women and made our contributions, not just regarding Ghana, but looking at Africa as a whole and some of the problems and so on. And so when there was a position for somebody to be in Ghana, from Ghana, I was nominated for election. I wasn't nominated to serve on it, but I was put in the pot. You know, there's a pot of names, and I got elected onto the Commission on the Status of Women. That's how I got there and started working. And once you start working at the Commission on Status on the Commission of Women, the world is your oyster. So that's how I ventured into the international. So for the Beijing Women's Conference, I was invited to chair the part of the platform for action that dealt with lawyers, legal literacy, and so if you there's a section on it. And the UN invited me to chair that in Bratislava. So we went to Vienna and took a bus to Bratislava. I spent 1 week crafting that portion of the platform for action. But I was a bit disillusioned about the UN and all. The platform for the Beijing Women's Conference, I worked so hard, really worked hard, got the platform for action. And then we came back, everybody put it on the shelf. At that point, I said to myself, I'm not getting involved in any more of these UN things. It's because it's a complete waste of time. So I had friends from Kenya calling me, we are not seeing you in Rome. I said, please do what you want in Rome and leave me alone. I don't want to be a part of it. Now I'm concentrating on my career in the university. In the university, it's publish or perish. If you don't publish, you perish. So I'm concentrated because I've been spending a lot of time doing other things. So let me get myself. And then there was something, I don't remember what it was. They came here. And one of my very good friends, I will not mention because she's a very famous woman, said, we have told your foreign minister that you should be part of this Rome negotiation. I said, it's none of your business. You've come to do work. Keep your mouth in your work and leave me out of it. So the Rome Statute was adopted with bottles of champagne at midnight, blah, blah, blah. Then he came, then one day the Minister, Attorney General, who is now the President of Ghana, called me. I was in my office. He said, well, what are you doing? I'm working. I'm in my office. He says, can you come and see me? I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm very busy on something. When I finish, I'll come. Is that okay? He said, you can't come now. I said, no, I can't, because I was really doing something. I said, maybe first thing tomorrow, I'll pass your office before going to the meeting. He said, okay. So I went. Then he said to me, the president had asked me to nominate you as a judge of the International Criminal Court. My face dropped. He looked at my face and said, you don't want to do it. I didn't say anything. He said, you don't want to do it? I didn't say anything. How do you say you don't want to do this? And when the president says go. I said, if you don't want to do it, I am not going to tell him. You go and tell him. I said, okay. But believe me, I wasn't happy about it. So I had to fill some forms, sign some things, blah, blah, blah. So we did all that because they had a deadline to meet. But I came back home. I didn't tell anybody except my husband. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my siblings. I didn't tell my colleagues at the faculty. Nothing. And I used to go for Commission on Status of Women. The commission sat for 3 weeks, 3 times a year. So in January, I was in New York. The elections were going to be in February. I was in New York for 3 weeks. Our ambassador was busy campaigning for me, but the commission sits from 10 o'clock till 6 p.m. And then after 6 p.m., we have our committee meetings. So really, I was so busy, there was no time for me to do it. So he'll come during the session and whisper to me, I'm going to have lunch with so and so on your behalf. I said, eat all of it. But he was very good. He was very, very good. So the commissions finished, I think on the 1st of February. I left New York on the 2nd because I wanted to visit my children in London. The elections were on the 4th or 5th, I don't remember. You know the time difference between New York and London. So it was quite late when Kwesi Korte, who was at the mission in New York, called my house in London. Said, we are popping champagne. Your mother has been elected to the International Criminal Court. And the children shout, hey, Eli came and go. They started shouting. So they got onto the internet, got all the, I hadn't even read the statute, to be honest with you. I didn't know what. So Eli came and said, this. They even went out to look for the salary I will be paid. You know, children. And he said, Mommy, the way you are paid so little at Legon, this way you wouldn't know how to spend it. So let's decide how much I get, how much Akofa gets, how much Daddy gets. I said, okay. So of course, the next day it was all over then. That was when anybody got to know that I had. So I came back home about a week later. And my colleagues in the faculty said, but you did it. I said, this was just a nomination for an election. I may not have been elected. There were 39 ballots to elect 18 judges. 6 of us got elected on the first ballot. I was one of the 6. Because the statute laid a lot of emphasis on gender, that there should be gender parity among the judges. So if Judge Pile got elected at the same time, she was part of my group of 6. So that's how I got onto the International Criminal Court. It wasn't an appointment, it was an election, a very tough election. So at the end of the 39 ballots, they had the 18 judges. But then they had to give us the full term of the court is 9 years. So they divided us into 3 groups. The first group got a term of 6 years once. Once you finish the 6 years, that was it. And the second group got a term of 9 years, also 9 years. But then 6 of us got a term of 3 years. And the statute said, if you got a term of 3 years, you were eligible for re-election for the full 9 years at the end of the 3 years. That is how I got to spend 12 years at the court. But nobody else, it was only the 6 of us who spent 12 years at the court. Nobody else did that. So that is the story of the ICC. People ask, how did you get appointed there? I wasn't appointed. It was I had to go through elections twice. And it's not pleasant. So we were inaugurated on the 15th of March, 2003. That's when Kofi Annan and Co, they inaugurated the court. Then we had an election to elect the president, the first and the vice second. Don't ask me how I got elected. I didn't even put myself forward. But it happened. I got elected first vice president, which meant that my term started immediately. I wasn't even supposed to come back home. But I was teaching. I had, so I had to make arrangements with my 2 colleagues. The president, Philip Kish from Canada, was a diplomat. So he could stay. The second vice president, Judge Benito, was from Costa Rica. She could also stay. So they allowed me to come and finish my teaching. We finished teaching in May. This was March. And mark my scripts and so on. But when we met as a presidency, the presidency decided that Philip Kish was a diplomat, so he takes on all the diplomatic issues of the court, dealing with state parties. Judge Benito was a judge in her country, so she was given the judicial function, and I was given the administrative function, which was the toughest because there was no court. There was absolutely no court. There were offices, empty offices. We had 40 staff who had come as I don't know, they had a name for them to try and secure the office and so on. So we now had to sit down. Where are the judges going to sit? Where is the prosecutor going to be? Where are the staff? What rules, what procedures are we going to adopt? Staff rules, all kinds of, so many things. But with the UN there, they helped us. They gave us people, we had meetings with them. So we're able to craft all the procedures and the rules and regulations. And then we had to recruit senior members. And the statute places great emphasis on gender and geography. So you can't simply get up and appoint anybody. For the senior staff, we had to appoint the registrar, we had to appoint various department heads and so on. It was a lot of work. So I came home, quickly finished my lectures, went back in April to continue setting up the court. Came back. I remember I carried some of my scripts. So in the evenings, I would be good. Came back, finished everything, and settled my affairs with the university. I remember going to the vice chancellor and telling him that, I'm sorry, I'm leaving. I cannot give you a year's notice. He says, hey, the law. I said, please, don't let us debate this matter. People have come to the university to work and sent you their resignations for the airport when they. So I'm not able to give you a year because that is our conditions of it. We have to give a year's notice to leave the event. I said, I'm not able to do that. I did not put myself where I am. So, bye-bye. I mean, you had to negotiate it. Then I wrote the formal letter and all that. And I went back to The Hague at the end of June. And then I didn't come back. So, working in the international arena is not easy. I don't know whether it was because I'm a woman and African, but it is not easy. You meet all kinds of barriers and people's attitudes, but you have to. I always tell people that leadership involves being able to read a situation and adopting a strategy that will give you a way through. So I had to do a lot of that. I had to study people. I had to know how to deal with people. We had 18 judges from 18 countries. They were all of different status. There was a Chief Justice. So you need to know how to deal with people. And I learned a lot from my mistakes. Of course, I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned a lot, which made me, I think, a better person. The judicial work was there, but the administrative work was a lot because we had to set up the court. We didn't even have a courtroom. So the carport, which was downstairs, was converted into a courtroom. So they gave us another car park, which was about 10 minutes walk from the main building. So there was a lot of work to be done. And of course, the prosecutor was now beginning his job. We didn't have any cases till 2005 or so. So we spent all that time having meetings, setting up all the little administrative works. And having probably been dean in the faculty also helped me a lot. Because again, the women were very few in the faculty. I think there were 2 or 3 of us at the time, among an all-male. So I can't say that it was easy, but it was doable. And by the grace of God, we managed to set up the court. And I remember Judge Odio Benito, the second vice president, and she was also a gender person. And we sat down, strategized, how do we orientate the men on the gender issues? Because the statute is very big on gender. You have to. You don't say you are going to train judges because you'll get their backup. So we organized for somebody. We had a 3-day session where we invited gender specialists to come and just give us a lecture on the gender aspects. At first they were like, hey, what, are you now going to? No, I said, no, we all need to be lectured and orientated towards the gender aspects of the statute so that we'll all know what it is that is required of. All right, that was fine. So we had a 3-day session where we had experts dealing with the gender aspects, what we are supposed to do and so on. I think in terms of jurisprudence, the statute provides a very interesting scenario, and that as time goes on, the kind of jurisprudence that will come out of the court would be very interesting because we apply both common law and civil law. As a common law lawyer, I cannot accept the fact that hearsay should be accepted in a trial. I'm like, hey, we don't do that. The civil lawyers say, well, we do that. But we put all the evidence in a basket at the end of which we sift, at the end of the trial, we sift the evidence and we take the credible ones and we throw the rest. At the end of the day, as a common law lawyer, I accepted that and did it. And found out that it didn't harm whether hearsay or not hearsay. You put them all in a basket. At the end of the trial, you sift it and you take out what is credible evidence, what is not credible. And you get justice at the end of it all. So as a common law lawyer, I wasn't the only common law lawyer. The common law lawyers were very like, hey, we don't do this. But in the end, we saw the wisdom of some of it. What we didn't like, we managed. It's not even not like. How does it look if we do it this way? How does it look if we do it this way? I remember many occasions when I have said, hey, this I think is the way we should go. As a presiding judge, I decide the way we should go. This I think is the way we should go. And I remember one particular decision I'm not allowed to mention, where they said, everybody, the legal officer, the academics are going to slaughter you at the end of this judgment. I said, let's see what happens. I delivered it. At the end of the day, everybody applauded me. And I remember my legal officer coming to me and saying, Judge, you were actually right. Now I see what, and this person has written this. I said, well, so it's a contribution of what you bring to it. How receptive are you to other ideas? So I think there's going to be an interesting jurisprudence coming out of the Rome Statute, which is a marriage of common law and civil law, which makes sense. Although if you think about it as a common law lawyer or as a civil law lawyer, you may not, your first reaction will be, no, we don't. But on second thoughts, you see that it can be done.